How did this 24-year-old walk-on linebacker go from selling shirts out of his car to becoming Nike's biggest competitor in less than 4 years? See, this is Kevin Plank, and after failing to get recruited by a single Division I college out of high school, he decided to walk on to the University of Maryland, which was located less than 20 minutes from where he grew up. Now, Kevin actually carved out an impressive role for himself as a captain of the special teams, but it wasn't his athletic skill that made him a standout. Instead, it was the fact that Kevin recalls being the sweatiest guy on the team. And since nearly every football player at the time would wear a cotton t-shirt underneath their pads, this often meant that Kevin had to change his shirt multiple times per game because the cotton would absorb the sweat and get too heavy. That's why after graduating in 1996, he invested all of his $17,000 in savings to find a better solution. But it wasn't as obvious as it seems. See, at the time, the only people wearing tight-fitting synthetic clothing were ballerinas and women in workout classes. But after testing several different fabrics in his grandma's basement, Kevin created his very first prototype of a compression shirt made from a moisture-wicking synthetic material. The tight-fitting shirt was meant to be worn under a player's uniform, but since the material wouldn't absorb sweat, it would remain dry and light throughout an entire game as compared to a traditional cotton t-shirt. And with the product in hand, Kevin traveled up and down the East Coast, selling these shirts from the trunk of his car. However, by the end of his first year, he only had around $100,000 in orders to show for it. But that's when he decided to make the biggest bet of his young career. See, in 1999, Kevin wanted to take out an ad in one of the biggest sports publications in the country, ESPN magazine. The only problem was one ad cost $25,000, which was all the cash his company had on hand. Still, Kevin and his team agreed to go without pay for weeks to be able to afford it. And, well, it worked. By the end of that year, the company had generated $1 million in sales, fueled by both the ad and the fact that athletes genuinely loved the product because it solved a problem Kevin knew they had. And after getting featured in 2000's Any Given Sunday, Under Armour reached $200 million in revenue less than a decade after launching. In fact, by 2015, they had surpassed Adidas after being valued at $20 billion, second only to Nike. But then, that same year, it all came crashing down. If you want a part 2 about how Under Armour went from the hottest name in sports apparel to being completely forgotten, let me know in the comments and make sure to follow so you don't miss it.